Hello and welcome to Views from the Market, mid-market private equity and M&A in Canada. My name is Mario Negro and I'm a partner in the private equity and M&A group at Stikeman, Elliott. For today's podcast, I'd like to welcome our special guest, Mario Pietro. Mario is the co-founder and managing partner at Origin Merchant Partners. Mario, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Mario, for having me. There's two things. First, I want to start off with is one, this might be the first time you've had two Marios on the podcast.
Super Mario.
And the second is, the reason we're doing this is because we have so much time on our hands. Italy didn't make the World Cup, so we've got nothing better to do. But thanks for having me. I look forward to it. You and I have known each other for a while, and I'm excited about talking about Origin and what we're seeing in the market and seeing if this helps clients, investors. So thanks.
Why don't we start there? Let's talk a little bit about you, a little bit about your history, and then about Origin and your practice in Origin.
Absolutely. So when you get this old, it feels like talking about yourself takes a lot longer, but I'll try and make it quick. So look, my first degree was in mechanical engineering. I went to University of Toronto. I had a passion for cars and motorcycles, and that's what drove me into that field. I graduated, did well, got recruited by Magna to work in their powertrain development group. And I never thought my Italian background would ever be helpful, but it was actually quite helpful. I was put in the European group, but specifically working for the Italian OEMs. So I was doing powertrain development for Fiat, Alfa Romeo, and Lancia, which honestly was a dream. So I got to do real design work and do it for brands that I was passionate about. And in doing all that, I realized ultimately that it wasn't something that I wanted to do for the rest of my career. Getting into the automotive space, I think understanding more about what it takes to be a great engineer, I realized that I was just too curious about what was happening in the business outside of just the technical side. And I started to interact more with finance and sales and marketing, and I wanted to know more about what was happening in those areas. And so I decided to leave this job, which in theory was my dream job. And you can relate, Mario, our Italian parents thought I was crazy to leave a good job, but went back to do my MBA at the University of Toronto at Rotman. And the whole idea behind it was honestly to just pivot from engineering into business, which a lot of people were doing. And so I worked from 95 to 98 in engineering, did my MBA between 98 and 2000. The reason that's important is because during my MBA, that's when all the internet companies were going public. And that's what ultimately made me excited about technology. In addition to it being a technical field, which honestly, my engineering background was very relevant, it was also the period of time. And so eBay went public and Amazon went public. And that was the only thing we were talking about at the time. And so I graduated in June 2000. I want to work in investment banking. I want to be in a tech group. And back then, there wasn't a lot of Canadian investment banks focused on tech. It was still like, we were still behind. And CIBC took a pretty large lead into tech, but there were a lot of other boutique firms like Yorkton at the time. And so that's where I started, because they were one of the few firms that was focused on knowledge-based industries. And a lot of the other banks just took a lot longer to get a tech practice up and running. But it was great experience. It led me ultimately to moving to CIBC World Markets, where I really did, I'd say, the majority of my learning and deal work. We had a terrific platform there. It was global. We went to all the tech hubs across North America, did a lot of cross-border work, took a lot of Canadian companies public during that time frame. I think the most notable ones, frankly, is probably Constellation Software. I was a co-lead on that, but there were dozens of others, and we worked on a bunch of M&A, and that was a phenomenal experience. I ultimately was running the tech group in Canada, but obviously CIBC went through some transitions. I moved to BMO to help build their tech team between 2011 and 2013. As they were expanding in the US while CIBC was kind of pulling away. And what I learned in that time was my experience at CIBC was super special. I think investment banking at the larger Canadian banks had certainly evolved a lot, especially after the financial crisis. And what I wanted to do was more entrepreneurial, transactions, work with more entrepreneurs. And look, the banks really wanted to stay focused on much larger ticket deals, and that was fine. I wanted to kind of spread my wings across a whole bunch of different areas that I was really passionate about, whether that was investing in tech, sitting on boards, but more importantly, just dealing with founders. So I was kind of thinking about what that would look like. And I was approached by some folks that I worked with at CIBC to start Origin, to build a firm that was really just back to basics, back to a partnership model. And we didn't have a strategy other than we knew our jobs really well and we had great clients. And you fast forward today, and that idea 14 years ago has turned into a 65-person firm in locations across Canada and expansion in the US that started about 4 years ago, focused almost entirely on M&A. We help companies raise capital through some growth equity financing work we do. And I started and built our tech team because that's what I knew. And so after 14 years, we've done over 55 technology deals in that time frame, helped a lot of founders make money, helped a lot of Canadian companies raise capital, sat on a few boards, invested in a lot of great Canadian tech companies. And so I got to do the thing I wanted. And so in many ways, I continue that journey, and hopefully we've created a great alternative for clients who want to work with a firm that's got no conflicts, that is really high touch, highly experienced, and we're covering every sector of the economy now, including, of course, my favorite sector, which is tech. That's it.
Marty, you've obviously seen a lot in tech and a lot is going on. I don't even know where we could begin. We could talk here for hours about all that's going on in tech, but tell us about what you're seeing on the ground in your practice right now with all the different forces, whether they're macro and then, what are you seeing on the ground?
I think it's a great question. And look, I've had the benefit of being dedicated to tech for 26 years. So I've seen the internet boom and bust. I've seen the telecom boom and bust. I've seen the emergence of enterprise software and then eventually SaaS. And this is different. This transition we're going through in tech with AI is very different, I think, from those trends, in the sense that it's changing really the way people think about how they use technology. Like, it used to be pretty simple. Like, we got a CD-ROM, we loaded a piece of software, and we kept it for years. And then that changed to hosting something in the cloud. But today, like, we're kind of questioning the basic fundamentals of how we use software, how we pay for software, how software is developed. Let's not forget that AI is software, so that's not going anywhere. But I think this idea of AI solving all our problems is still quite a ways away, but it's certainly changing a lot of how we think about the sector more broadly. And look, the challenge right now is, like, most investors who put money into these companies have a 4 to 5 year sort of horizon. The biggest challenge they have, frankly, is figuring out what 4 to 5 years from now looks like. And it's never been a tougher time now. In the past, like, we could see how the market might evolve, but like, someone investing in a company today is really worried about what that company might look like in 4 to 5 years, because the changes that are happening in the market just keep evolving more quickly. And the same is happening, look, on the buyer side. Like, companies that we've known for years, founders have built these businesses, they've existed and persisted, in some cases for 20 years, are now feeling concerned that maybe their sustainability isn't as good as they thought it was. And so there's like a real transition happening where we're reevaluating what things are worth. Entrepreneurs who thought maybe their businesses were worth X are worth less than that now. Investors are feeling confused. Buyers are being a little bit, well, a lot more careful. So we'll have to see how this all plays out. I fundamentally believe that AI is software, and so software isn't going anywhere. But how we value those businesses and how we think about their sustainability and resiliency, I think, is going to change over the next few years.
You're obviously living the impacts of these changes every day. What are you seeing on the deal flow? You already alluded to it. How buyers are looking at tech and software businesses, how sellers are now looking at it. How is it impacting the kind of M&A processes that you're in and getting deals done?
It's interesting. Like, we've never been busier. I think people are looking at this and thinking, look, I don't want to wait 2 years because I don't know what that's going to look like. We've been getting lots of inbounds. I've been talking to a lot of my clients who are now thinking about selling their businesses. The challenge we have is more on the other side, which is that's great, but how are buyers going to think about your business? So what we're trying to do is really triage a lot of these opportunities to try and figure out, look, yes, your business has value. Here's what we think it could be worth. And that value typically is lower than what they had historically thought. And in some cases, it might be higher, depends on how you've incorporated some of the AI strategies or where you sit on the value chain in AI. Like, the closer you reside to the data, the more valuable you're going to be. And the more further away you are from that, the more vulnerable you could potentially be. So there's lots of stuff going on. And we're trying really hard to figure out which of these deals could be successful in market. We're trying to realign on value and expectations. And I think that's where a lot of our work is. I think we can be in market with dozens of deals, but you don't want to do that unless you feel like you can get something done. So being active is important. We're in the market like right now with quite a few transactions. So we can read the market really well. We're in lots of conversations with investors and buyers. But like I said, they're having a tough time too. Like, they own dozens of companies in their portfolios. They don't know necessarily what the value of those might be. So until we get more data points, until we see this market maybe kind of run its course a little bit more, I think we'll have a better sense of where you fit on that value spectrum and ultimately whether you're prepared to transact.
What type of companies are attractive in this market? It's interesting. You hear different things from different people. You had mentioned earlier, ones that are closer to data seem to be getting, and I've seen that too. But I want to get a sense from you, like, where do you find people are getting comfortable and yet people are still on the sidelines waiting for more data?
Yeah, I think people would be really, really surprised that hardware is making a reemergence. Like, we used to think that hardware was a bad thing because it was a one-time sale. People view hardware now and software combined together as value because that hardware appliance really is a barrier to entry for disruption with AI. Like, if you're delivering your solution through a hardware device, then in theory, that should protect you more than if you're just delivering the solution over the cloud. So that's one thing that's happening. So if you're a business that has some hardware, like think of video telematics or other types of hardware businesses, those are getting a lot of attention. Tech enabled is getting a ton of attention. So traditional businesses that are using technology now and AI specifically to make their businesses better are thriving. Like, we just announced a deal with a SPAC where we're taking one of the largest last mile e-commerce delivery companies public through a SPAC. And one of the things that they've done really well is embedded technology in their platform to make themselves more efficient, to use a lighter asset model. And we're seeing that across a lot of different areas. And look, I think ultimately AI native is like the word you're going to hear a lot, which is you have to be building things that are starting with AI and therefore give you at least some foot in the door when it comes to explaining that your business will not be as vulnerable, let's say, compared to some software that isn't using it. Like, the challenge too, Mario, is like a lot of the AI companies are either really, really big or really small. And so we've got to create a better ecosystem where there's some players that are in between. But we are seeing some pretty interesting bright spots. It's just going to need to play out a little bit more.
The other side of the equation, on particularly the impact of AI, is on the impact it's having on your business itself. Can I ask you a little bit about how you're using it in your business? I mean, we hear a lot about AI really almost transforming the investment banking process. That cloud has become almost like an associate to some people, is the way people say, this idea that you start with these AI programs to prepare SIMs and to do business development, to outreach it. I'm curious a bit about what you're seeing at both yourself and then how Origin is looking at the impact of AI on the investment banking business.
We've been doing a ton of research around it and trying to figure out how can it help us be more efficient. Like that's the key thing I would say is we want to be able to deliver a better product. And so like I think this idea that it's going to replace a lot of our junior or mid-level staff is a bit premature. In fact, if I had to say, like, I think it's only going to enhance what we do. It'll make us faster, a little bit more thorough. Right now, we're trying different things. Like we're running Claude, we're running Copilot, we're running some specific applications around client management, but there's no perfect answer. Like right now, I'm asking any of those tools to create a teaser or a sim. It just isn't consistent with the quality and I think the detail that we really want. Will it get better? I'm sure it will. But I think we still need that human element to make sure that the advice actually makes sense. And the thing with AI is like it's really missing that emotional component, which some may say doesn't matter, but it certainly matters in our business. So how we deliver the information is part of that human element. Like advice isn't always black and white. There isn't always a simple answer. And so like, I think what's great about our brains is that we have a really good way of trying to figure out how to provide advice based on a number of factors, which isn't just ones and zeros. It's based on people's emotion, what their objectives are, and a lot of other factors.
I just want to emphasize one thing that you spoke the zeitgeist of the moment, which is AI is not able to deal with the emotional.
Correct.
I could not have said it better. I'm going to actually use that if it's okay.
Until the robots come, Mario, I think we'll be okay.
My last question is a question I ask everyone. It's a crystal ball question. I mean, you've been doing this a long time, or you've seen your work expand, evolve. Where does this all go? Where do you think the market is going? And in this sense, a broader question for you about technology and software businesses in Canada with all that's going on. What is your sense about where the market's going?
Look, Mario, like I'm an optimist. I think if we've done this long enough, like you and I have, I think what you realize is it's never as bad as people think it is, and it's probably never as good as people think it is. So there's going to be a place that's somewhere in between where it's going to be a great market for some companies. Other companies are just going to have to readjust. And there's going to be value for those companies. It's just not going to be what they thought it was. And the great thing now is what I really get excited about is anyone can be an entrepreneur. Anyone can start a business. It's never been cheaper. Everything can be rented in tech. All your tools can be sourced from the cloud. AI is accessible to everyone. So like the great thing about this time is like everyone has an opportunity with an idea to create a business. It's still like the success of that still depends on execution. You still have to deliver a great service and a great value prop. The one thing that we've learned in software is ROI will always be a key measure of how companies and technology do. There has to be a real return on any of those investments. The user has to feel they're getting something valuable in return. I don't think that's going to change, but I think all of us now have the ability to create a tech company. I think you and I can start a tech company, Mario. And so I'm encouraged by that. And I get that it's going to potentially cause some disruptions, obviously, with other businesses. But the great thing about tech is it reinvents itself every single time.
Mario, thank you for joining us. It's been great to hear about your past and Origin's story and Origin's success, and greatly appreciate your insights. And I am super happy to know that you're confident about the future, given with all that's going on. If somebody who's right in the trenches is confident about the space that's being the most disrupted, that's a great sign for all of us.
And thanks for having me. And I appreciate being invited to do this. And yeah, I look forward to continuing to work together. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to Views from the Market. Stay updated with the latest episodes by subscribing wherever you find your podcasts or visiting stikeman.com/viewsfromthemarket.